Hi, and welcome to Safe Space. I'm your host, Chris Edwards, and today I've got another amazing guest to bring to you. I have Joëlle Bayaa-Uzuri, originally from Germany, but has also lived in St. Louis, LA, and currently resides in Houston. Hey, Joëlle, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I'm so honored to have you on and for you to tell your story. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive in and do a deep dive.
Well, like you said, my name is Joëlle Bayaa-Uzuri. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Also, hot girl, icy girl, city girl, material girl, period.
Okay.
I work in community advocacy. I work for a nonprofit here based in Houston, Texas, called the Normal Anomaly Initiative. But outside of nonprofit and the community advocacy work that I do, I engage in political advocacy and movement work. Also, I'm a thrift shopper. I love to roller skate. I'm a plant mom. I love to travel. I love live music. So I love all the things. I love anything that's like a good vibe and that makes you feel good. Those are the things I really enjoy.
Oh, that is awesome. I'm so looking forward to having this conversation with you. So, as you know, Safe Space is a show where I give people from the LGBTQIA plus community, especially people of color, an opportunity to tell their stories and, their origin stories and how they've gotten to this particular point in their life. We have journeys and we've got stories to tell, and I want people to be able to hear those stories. And having you on shows another side of the community. So let's go all the way back. Us in the community, we always know that we're a little bit different. We stand out a little bit. And, for everyone, that happens at a different point in their life. For you, when did that reality set in? When did you know that you were a little bit different than everyone else?
So it's interesting. And I tell this story and people, and sometimes it even shocks me every so often, but I actually knew that my physical self and how I felt on the inside weren't aligned. I actually knew this when I was as young as 4. So when I was like 4 or 5, I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I'm a girl. And, I feel like I didn't have the language for it. And I mean, this was in the late 80s, like, early 90s. I come from a Black family. My mother's from the Midwest. My dad is Jamaican. And so there wasn't language for it, but I knew that I felt different. Like I was like, something is different. And, at that time, my parents were going through a very tumultuous divorce. We were moving across country. We were residing in Virginia, but we were moving to St. Louis to be with my mom's side of the family. And so with all of that kind of turmoil, I wasn't able to really delve into those feelings. I kind of suppressed them, but I always knew. I always knew that I really was a lot more femme identifying. But I think that it was more than just wanting to dress feminine. I felt this feeling in my gut and in my spirit that I was different, and that the way that society wanted to condition me to be, and the way that my family wanted to condition me to be, that was not happening, because I wasn't feeling it at all. And I was very vocal about it too.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You said you came to your parents and your mother at the age of 4. You said, I'm a girl. What was the reaction like? Because it's one thing to say, to know that you're either gay, but to also know that you are in the wrong body. What was that conversation like?
Oh gosh, she just started bawling. She was crying. My dad, because I also said it, and it said it to my father, my biological father, which they were working through their separation and divorce. And so there was all these things going on, and she was just crying. And so I think they chalked it up to the stress of the divorce. They knew that I was more feminine. But they, like many parents, I think that they thought that it was just a phase. They thought that once things settled after the divorce, that, you know, I would kind of just, all the feelings would work itself out. My mother bawled. I mean, she was crying so hard when I said it. And I mean, that wasn't the first time that I said anything like that, but I think I wasn't able to, because of having to move and having to relocate and essentially start over, I really wasn't able to revisit or delve into those feelings well into my teens.
Right, right. And then also, you know, being 4, that's such a tender age. And I think a lot of parents will just kind of shrug that off as, oh, you really don't know what you're talking about, or, you know, what do you know about this? And you're hearing stuff on TV. But, you know, I think all of us who belong to the community know when we know, you know, and it doesn't matter what age it is. And we have to validate our feelings. A lot of times, like you said, you don't have the words to articulate what it is that you feel on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So let's fast forward a little bit. You know, you said you start to revisit those issues again as a teenager, as a young teen. Talk about what it felt like to you, you know, now having and experiencing life a little bit, going through puberty and still realizing that this is not the body I'm supposed to be in. What was that feeling for you personally? And then also having to revisit this conversation with your mother or both of your parents.
So it's so interesting because throughout my childhood, after I initially was like, you know, Mom, I'm a girl and, you know, I feel different, we just didn't talk about it. And so, but as I was going through my childhood and growing up, I knew that I was different and I knew that I was more feminine and more femme identifying. I also knew that I loved men. I loved men. I mean, I wish that I was a little more open, but I'm pretty sure I was very open and vocal about me being attracted to men. And I knew that I loved men once again when I was like 5 or 6. I knew that I liked boys. And so, like, when I was becoming of age, when I was a preteen, I still had those feelings, but it was a struggle because I really didn't have the space to navigate or work through them. My mother was a single mother. She was a single mother of 3, working 1, sometimes 2 jobs. I was having to take a lot of the responsibility of the house while she was at work. So I was caring for my 2 younger sisters. And so there really wasn't the space to navigate or work through my feelings. And so I just kind of, you know, as they naturally would come out, I would kind of address or deal with them. But I really wasn't able to fully process it. So really the first thing that I was able to process was my sexuality or, you know, being attracted to men. That was kind of the first thing that I was able to navigate because I think naturally in our community, our orientation is a lot easier to process or navigate than our gender identity. And so, you know, for a lot of my teenage years, I spent that really kind of navigating and being comfortable with being, you know, with being attracted to men. And I think I didn't get the correlation between my sexual orientation and my gender identity until I went to college. Because in college, I was no longer caring for a household or taking care of my sisters, or, you know, I was by myself. I moved from St. Louis to LA. So I really had the space to really sit with and say, like, who am I? And like, what do I want this next chapter of my life to be? And really have the freedom to kind of delve into that.
Wow, that's amazing. To even have that understanding. And then here's the thing. I am a true believer that when you go away to college, it allows you to explore and to see who you really are, because you're engulfed in so many different cultures and just people. I want to go back a little bit. You mentioned that you have 2 other sisters. Growing up in a home where you have other siblings, and especially when you identify as a young lady, how did that interaction with your sisters go? What was the relationship there?
You know, it was so interesting. I was very much, even at a young age, I was like the 3rd parent. So a lot of my life, I kept private from my sisters, and my sisters were not far apart. My middle sister, she's 2 years younger than me. My youngest sister is only 4 years younger than me. So we grew up, our ages are very close. But I graduated high school in 03. My middle sister graduated in high school, I think 06 or 07, I think. So our lives were even though we were close in age, our lives were greatly different. And I was a very mature child. And so a lot of like my coming to age story about my sexuality and my gender identity, I don't even think my sisters even know to this day, just because of how I kind of processed it alone. And I didn't compartmentalize it, but I knew for the longest time within my family, there just wasn't space for that conversation. I didn't feel like there was space or there was capacity to really have that conversation. I wasn't even sure of what that conversation would be like. And so really, when I started to really understand who I was, both sexually and both my gender identity, I was already in college. And so, and my sisters were still in middle school and elementary school. So there really wasn't an understanding really of who I was. They really didn't correlate it until we were well into adulthood. And even still, there are large chunks of the story that they just don't know.
Okay. So you talked about kind of like coming of age when you went away to college. Talk about your experiences and your journeys from that point on.
So when I was in college, it was when I immediately got to college. This is 2003. This was my pre-trans journey, and I was very feminine. And I was kind of more, we also didn't have the language then. It was more so like androgynous, but I was very androgynous, and I played the gender lines, and I was very femme. And I kind of played with it as much as possible because I had the space to, and I really was able to think expansively about how I wanted to present and how I wanted to identify. And so I was meeting more people, and I was engaging, I was going out, I was seeing more types of representation that I could feel and identify with. So I was an RA. I went to an art school. I was an RA. And this was probably my last term. I moved in a woman into the dorms. And so the woman, I still was identifying as male at that time. And so the woman, I went to our student services, and they were like, oh, Joe, here you have to move in this person. And I was like, why is she moving into our dorm? This is a men's dorm. And so they didn't have the language either. They were just like, can you just move Tamara into the dorm? And I was like, oh, okay, she's trans. And I was like trying to process it as I was moving her in. And I had so many questions. And, so I moved her into the dorm. So that same day or the next day, I see this black woman, gorgeous, beautiful black woman in my dorm. And she's going into, Tamara's room. And so I'm like, who is that? So I end up meeting her. Her name is Kalia. She's also trans. She's also from St. Louis. And I was like, oh my God. And so we instantly connected and bonded, and we instantly hung out. Kalia was the first Black trans woman that I met personally and knew. And so we hung out and we talked, and we would go out and we would do these things. And Kalia, one day, we were in my dorm room, and she was like, have you ever, thought about being trans, or have you ever considered yourself trans? And I was like, no, that's not me. That's not, I was like, no, I don't, I think my excuse was, I don't want to subscribe to what society says that trans is, or what society says that gender is defined as. I was like, no, I'm just doing my own thing. And so we ended up getting into this debate about femininity versus masculinity. It was such a random debate that we were getting into. It was a group of people in my dorm room, and me and Kalia were on the same side talking about femininity and talking about experiences with femininity. So at the end of the debate, she leaned over and she was like, well, sis, it sounds like me and you are on the same side of the coin. And it really took me back. And I was so shocked. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I really need to think about this. And so, I graduated and I got my own apartment, and me and Kalia were very close. And so like I would tiptoe around it, but I think one day for Pride, this was like Long Beach Pride. This was, I think, 2005, or 2000. I think it was 2005, 2006. I think we were out and about, and there was just a moment where it hit. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to kind of jump in here a little bit. Because I truly believe that higher education, colleges and universities are such a great equalizer. It opens your mind to so many things. And I'm so glad you were able to connect with people who identify the way you identify, so you can get to understand who you were as a person. So I think that they opened up your eyes, and it made the world just that much brighter for you.
Mm-hmm. They did. They did, and I actually have the space. I think too oftentimes in our community, we don't get the space to actually breathe and process, because for many of us, we're in survival mode. We are just trying to make it. So we don't get the space or the luxury to sit back and breathe and really like think about ourselves and like think about our identity, or, where we are.
I'm so glad you said that, because, especially when it comes to trans lives and issues deals with trans individuals, they don't get the chance to breathe. I mean, right now, trans rights and just being trans is under attack in this country and around the world. Mm-hmm. So listen, I have to say this, and I know it sounds a little weird to say this, but you are truly brave by being able to come forward and tell your story so that other people can hear it and see you, because I believe that you doing this, you're going to help somebody else. And this is the only reason why I'm doing this. So thank you so much for doing this. I didn't want to interrupt the story, but continue.
Thank you. No, because I was starting to really like relive it. So I think for me, I think a lot of people who are trans have that one trans pivotal moment where they're like, I'm trans. I didn't really have that. It was just more of a gradual, like, okay, let me tiptoe into the water. Let me, try this. Let me wear this. But it was, I would say my pivotal moment was meeting another Black trans woman and seeing myself in her. Like, in her seeing me. I think I didn't have the language still. I was very scared. I wasn't confused. I was very scared. I didn't have the language. I was having all of these feelings. I wasn't sure of where to go or like how this would essentially change my life. But I was able to see a Black trans woman and for her to tell me, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be. It's okay if you want to do it. It's okay if you don't want to do it. It's okay how you want to do it. I remember like we were at Pride, and I remember the first time telling someone and identifying as a woman openly. And like just having that support from my friends and having Kalia be there to like help me walk through it, not tell me what to do. And I think that so often, especially in the trans community, people are told how to present. You are told this is what you have to do. The beautiful thing about my experience and my bond and my friendship and sisterhood with Kalia was she created the space. And, she was like, you are trans. You are a woman, regardless of how you present. I'm going to be a guide. And you can or can't take stuff. You can or can't pick something up. But, she was my guide. She, helped me, get into heels for the first time. She, you know, helped me with like makeup and like, you know, this is what you know, this is, you know, helping me like embrace my trans identity and really help kind of smooth the way. As I was, you know, because those first years, I would say maybe first like year, 18 months, it was a little rocky because it's like, you know, I'm figuring it out. It was like my second adolescence. I was trying to figure it out as I was going along.
Right. What was your process? I know that you said that you had Kalia. Is that her name? Did I say it correctly? To help you to say, here are some things to kind of help you along the way. But what was your personal journey like? How did you approach it? Because I know that everyone approaches it differently. Like, you know, was it something you just did in secret, or were you just completely public about it? You know, how did you come about sharing your identity with the world?
So I was very public because I don't want to say that I'm a very public figure. I'm a very public person. I'm very connected to friends, and so I was very public about it. I was already very femme identifying, so it was just a very natural progression. And like I went to work, and I think at work I didn't talk about it. Like I didn't say, you know, hey, I didn't make an announcement, but it was very public. The transition, I transitioned at work. Like whatever I was doing outside of work, I was doing it at work. I just didn't openly talk about it unless someone asked. And like I talked about it with my friends at work, and everyone knew. It wasn't a secret thing. It was something. I didn't make it a thing or an issue because for me, I wanted to normalize just being. So for me, it's like, well, I'm already a very I'm very femme and I'm femme presenting, and I'm femme identifying. So the jump wasn't a leap across the Grand Canyon. It was more like a hop across the street. Like it wasn't a very good like long stretch.
Right.
And so it was very much like I went to work, you know, how Joëlle was 24/7. I think the good thing about my journey was I worked in fashion. And so I was able to present and it was okay. Like it was actually embraced.
Yeah, you worked in an environment where that was more acceptable. Because that was gonna be my next question, because you know, a lot of times when people are transitioning, they tend to either do it a very slow, gradual process, or you have those that they do it very quickly and it's a quick turnaround. So I just want to interject just a quick story. When I was in college in my undergrad, this was like 96, 97, I had a professor who was in the department that I had worked and I went to school in. One, at the end of the semester, you know, he was the professor that everyone knew. And then I was fortunate because during the summer I worked at the school, and I was able to see that transition. But when people came back, they were told, your professor you signed up for is still the professor you signed up for, but now they identify as this person. And it, you know, at my school at the time, this was like 96, 97, like I said, it still was a big deal. But we lived in an environment at our school where it was very diverse, and all people were welcome. So, but it was definitely a transition. And sometimes people don't know how to react to that. So I guess what I'm asking you is like, how did your coworkers accept you? And then also, additionally, how did your family start to accept you? Because now you're fully embracing who you are, you know, identifying as a woman and living your life as a woman. How did they treat you and how did they accept you?
So it's interesting. My coworkers loved it. I mean, my coworkers were my friends. They loved it. I actually, you know, aside from Kalia, a lot of the things that I learned from womanhood, I learned from my peers, from my coworkers, from cis women, who were so happy that I was, you know, being unapologetic about my identity. And so a lot of the tips and tricks of womanhood I still use to this day. And a lot of it has shaped like who I am today. And it wasn't just one type of woman. It was Black cis women, Black queer women, white women. I mean, but everyone universally loved it. Like, I mean, I wish that more trans people got the support that I got from community and from my work. Now, I'm not, and this, I could definitely talk about this. It wasn't easy professionally, but personally in my work life, I got immense support, even from my boss. The initial support was overwhelming. My family, my family is from St. Louis. They're Midwest, Black. It was, because I wasn't secretive about it. I mean, pictures were all over Facebook. I was not secretive about it at all. I just didn't name it. It was just like, you could just see it. But it was just me being normal. I was normalizing my journey.
You were just being Joelle.
Yeah, I was. And so at that period, I had stopped going home often. Because I just was losing the connection with my family for various reasons. I just had stopped going home often. Also, when I was in high school, I was 5'4". I'm 5'9" now. So and my family is short. They're short, they're a lot thicker built, heavier set. I'm tall, I'm slender. I have a more feminine shape. So when I went home, it was very much like I was a stranger, and I had to navigate that. I kind of had to rebuild that relationship because it was very much like I was a stranger. Like, for many people, I think some of the people that engaged with me, like on social media, and we might have talked, it was easier of a transition. But my family overall, it was like I was a celebrity coming home. Because I literally left one way and almost came back physically different, taller, different body type, more feminized. And I didn't cover up. Like, I was very much I showed my body. And so it was definitely a transition. Some of it was easier than others. Sometimes it was easier than others. I think overall it was okay. But it wasn't. We weren't family. I would say we weren't family. I would say I was a distant family member to my immediate family.
Right.
It was literally like we were starting over. And so it was a transition that we're still navigating, that is still rough.
Gotcha. Well, listen, you are such a vibrant, enthusiastic, happy person. And here's the thing, not everyone has that experience. I'm so glad that, you had that for yourself. How are you feeling today and in the world that you live in?
So I will say I did have that experience. It wasn't all easy. I will say that overwhelmingly it was good until it wasn't. Personally, it was good. Professionally, so it's interesting. I was presenting as trans my entire journey, but there was a moment when I openly said I am trans, and this is how it is. Because for a while I was presenting, but I was kind of teetering the line, not really openly saying anything about it. The moment that I openly said that I was trans, professionally, I immediately hit a wall. I was denied promotions. I was, when I was interviewing and trying to move around, I would be openly told, you're not qualified. Even though I had worked in fashion for a decade, I was a senior level position at companies, but I would be told you're not, you are not a fit. After they saw my resume and said that I was a fit, and so I ultimately left fashion because of the transphobia. Because of the glass ceiling. because even though fashion is super creative, I worked in the corporate side. I worked in the manufacturing side. It's not. It is like any other industry. It is like any other business. And so it was very hard professionally. There for years, once I decided to leave this industry that I kept hitting glass walls in, there were years when I struggled professionally. I was unemployed, ultimately lost my housing, and had to navigate the system as a Black trans woman now, because I wasn't, I was living it, but I never said it. Once I said it, things ultimately shifted. Like, there was a hard shift. It was almost overnight. There was a hard shift.
Wow, that's actually really interesting that you say that. Living the life, but not saying it, everyone was okay. But the moment you said it, people had a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to me how society sees people and acknowledges them. But you've overcome a lot throughout your life, and you now currently reside in Houston, Texas, and you're living a different life. You're living a great life, and you're helping others. I want to spend the rest of our time really talking about what it is that you do currently and how you help the community.
So I moved to Houston because I was seeking Black queer community, and I was seeking something different. I was seeking a more sustainable life. And so I moved to Houston. I completely started over. Came to Houston with 2 suitcases, slept on my sister's couch. And I really came to a point where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I have the opportunity to completely rebuild it. Why am I chasing that old life that I was so unhappy in? And so I was like, I want to be in community. This is why I came to Houston. I want to be in community. So I think the social media, the internet algorithms heard me. And so they referred me, a post came up about a Black trans-led organization in Houston called the Mahogany Project, about them looking, having an event for Black Trans Empowerment Week, which is in November. And so I was like, I'm going to go. So I messaged them and they invited me. And that was my first time being in a space that was almost exclusively Black and queer and centered Black trans women. I didn't even know that spaces like those existed. I met Black trans women in community. I met Black queer organizations. And I was like, I never want to leave this space. I want to know, how can I contribute? How can I help cultivate? LA has queer liberated spaces, but they're not Black. And so that was 6 years ago. And so I've been working in community ever since. Whether it was, I had a full-time job, there were, years where I was working full-time and volunteering 30 plus hours for a nonprofit, because that's how much I believed in community advocacy and doing the movement work. The organization that I currently work with, the Normal Anomaly Initiative, it's a Black queer-led nonprofit based in Houston. I was hired in 2021. It was in the thick of the pandemic. I was really trying to work in community full time. I was a manager at Target. It was awful. It was awful. During the pandemic, I could probably fill up another podcast about awful Target stories. And I wasn't just a manager. I was a key carrying manager. So I was opening, closing the store, doing cash, like, it was terrible. It was, I loved my work, my coworkers. It was one of the worst jobs I've had. But through that, I still volunteered 30 hours a week, in community. So there was an opportunity to work with the Normal Anomaly. I got a call and they were like, Joëlle, are you still looking to work in community? And I was like, yes, I am. And so they were like, well, we have this opportunity. They didn't tell me what it was. And so I met with the executive director, Ian, a good friend of mine now. And up until then, we had seen each other a couple of times. And we talked about the position and he was like, honestly, it's yours if you want it. And I was like, I absolutely want it. I was like, at that point, I had no real context about what I would be doing. But I knew that it was community work. I knew that it was transformative. It was a newer nonprofit. And I knew that it would be taking a leap of faith, but I felt like I need a change, and I don't know what the future held. I was like, I've been broke before, I've been homeless before, I've been unemployed before. So regardless of what would happen in the distant future, this was the leap I need to take to get myself out of Target and to really, settle into community. And I've been with the Normal Anomaly for over 3 years. I'm currently a program director. Our work centers Black queer joy at the real root of it. We have a drop-in space that we just opened in Third Ward. It's Houston's only Black LGBT drop-in space. But we do a lot of things. We do, direct service. Go ahead.
Explain what a drop-in space is for those that don't know.
Great question. So a drop-in space, I'm going to give a little context about drop-in space. So in the 80s, oftentimes Black LGBT people, Black and brown LGBT people were kicked out of their homes. They were, faced housing insecurity. They didn't have anywhere to go. And so essentially these community centers or safe spaces were created in houses, literal houses that were safe, that became safe spaces for community. Ultimately, at first they were spaces for them to practice, like for balls, or places for them to sleep. But they became places where they were able to get hot meals, and they were able to get HIV testing and get direct services that really spoke to their needs. And so that's kind of what a drop-in space is. A drop-in space kind of evolved from that, a space where community can come to get services. They can get direct services. They can, also just have a safe space to just kind of be. I think that model is, I think at this time, it's interesting. I think COVID has shown that when we don't have space for community to go, it really hurts community. And so in a city like Houston, where housing insecurity is a problem, where, safety continues to be a problem, Black trans women are continuing to get murdered, community just doesn't have enough safe spaces, a drop-in space is absolutely needed. And they're in cities across the country. And a lot of times they are in actual houses because it's supposed to feel like home.
Right. Now, I've noticed, because I follow you on social media, and one of the things I noticed is that you're very big in your community, with the nonprofit that you work with, and then also being very public, you're on local TV. Talk about that experience and being able to get your voice and for yourself personally and the community out there to the public.
So I believe in bidirectional allyship. I believe in allyship that benefits everyone. I also believe in going into spaces that we typically aren't, but that we need to be in. One space that I can think of is the political space and political advocacy. I think that oftentimes Black LGBT people lead movements, but we are oftentimes either pushed out or we are excluded from political spaces. And so I currently sit on the board of Houston's LGBT Political Caucus. They've been around for 44 years. It's the largest LGBT political organization in the South, not just Houston, not just Texas, but in the entire South. I am actually the first Black trans woman that has been elected to the board, which is very odd, I will say. It's very odd.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. And that reason is why I won't leave the board and why I continue to do advocacy, because if I'm the first, and I can only do so much, it shows why we're absolutely needed in those spaces and why it's important that that representation is there, because go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this. Now that you've gotten a taste of a little bit of, I guess, politics, do you see that that's something that's in your future, bigger political aspirations?
So it's interesting. I've talked about it. I'm considering a run in a couple of years. The Victory Fund, which the LGBT Victory Fund is the largest. It's a national organization that endorses and funds LGBT candidates and like helps provide tools to get them elected. They every year they do various trainings. It's very, I don't want to say it's exclusive, but it is the upper echelon of like, if you want to run for politics and you are LGBT, if you don't get the Victory Fund's endorsement, there is a very slim chance that you will get elected. I was referred because of my work. I hadn't thought about running for office yet, but I went to their campaign training for candidates that are thinking about running. So I did go to the training last year. It definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I am considering running. I think the political climate in these past elections have gave me a little bit of pause, but it is something that I'm considering, and it is something that I'm trying to figure out what that pathway looks like. And also, one of the things I think that's very important is if I run, how will community be supported? Because I think that that's important too.
Yeah.
If I run, because I will no longer be a community advocate if I run.
Right.
How will community be uplifted and supported?
Well, listen, I'm sure there are many more people like you out there that are willing to pick up the baton and to keep the fight and the run going that you've started. You are an amazing light. I think that whatever you put your mind to, you're going to succeed at it. So as we start to wrap this up, what words of wisdom can you bestow upon the audience that's watching you today?
Keep going. Sometimes things don't make sense when you're in the thick of it. I mean, there were years when life did not make sense. There were years when I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it to the next year. Years, not even just days or weeks. There were years that did not make sense. But today, in hindsight, they make sense. If I didn't go through those years, I wouldn't be here. If I wasn't unemployed for years or homeless or couch surfing, I wouldn't have had the courage to move to Houston. And I think that oftentimes we are safe because that's all we know. But a lot of times what we know isn't going to get us to the other side. And on the other side is joy and hope and liberation and love and light. And I think letting go of fear and embracing the unknown and trusting the process, for me, was the biggest shift in my life.
Wow. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your positivity. You are a beacon of light. And I hope that people walk away from this conversation that we had today, learning something and feeling uplifted and positive. We need more people like you, Joëlle. And I thank you so much. This has been amazing. It touches my heart when I have people on that I just have a connection with, and I feel it through the screen. I wish you nothing but continued success in everything that you do. I am sure that we're going to be hearing about you in the future as an elected political figure working for the community. Please let people know where they can reach out to you. Give them your social handles.
So it's interesting. My Facebook is Joëlle Bayaa-Uzuri. My Instagram and my Twitter is your man's first choice. That is, I will never give that up. even with a political career. But I think more importantly, I would love for people, I think it's important, if you want to know me, follow the work that I do. I think that you will really find me. I work for an amazing organization called the Normal Anomaly Initiative. Um, follow me, yes, but really also follow the Normal Anomaly Initiative. That we do amazing work. And I think that it will show you and expose you to how being community centered and community focused and centering Black queer and Black trans lives and stories and bodies will lead to liberation for all of us.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, we'll make sure we have all of your information in the description below so that people can find you and follow your journey. This is, like I said, this has been amazing. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me this week. Join me next week for another amazing episode. So until then, be kind to yourselves, take care of others, and maintain a safe space. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching this show on Indecent Media. Now, if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification button so that you can get notified when we drop new videos every week. See you guys next time.